Hey everybody, happy Monday. Welcome to the Coffee Milk Hour. I'm Puffy. As always, I'm joined here with, whatever your name is. I don't fucking remember.
My name is Steve.
It's Ron, actually, but points on trying to get the reference.
Actually, I was referencing the movie Stealing Harvard, not Family Guy, but that's cool.
Wow.
You didn't catch the
Overused
reference.
Jokes in the cultural norm. That's not
Oh yeah, because quoting Family Guy is not the most overused thing in the fucking universe.
Tell the people who you are.
I'm Jerry.
Yeah, welcome to the show, guys. I hope you had a good weekend, all you lovely people out there. I had a pretty fantastic weekend. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. It was a pretty good weekend, yeah.
Yeah, upbeat weekend. It was a good time. Obviously overshadowed by the terrible things that happened in Florida. We're not going to be talking about that today. There's enough political propaganda coming from every fucking source out there this weekend. I just want to say my condolences are with the families of the people who were there. I feel like that's being overshadowed by the gun control lobbyists and the anti-democrat lobbyists and all of that crap. And just, I'm sorry. It's a shitty thing that happened. It sucks. Now's the time to come together and unite over something terrible that happened, not fucking push your agenda. So that's all I have to say on that topic.
Very good. So what are we actually talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about welfare and why it's the devil.
I don't
Get rid of it! No more welfare!
We're going to talk about how welfare is the saving grace of America.
Excuse you?
That it's probably one of the best social programs that we have, and that it helps tons and tons of people, and we should probably... I'd rather get rid of the military than welfare, to be totally honest with you.
No. We should downsize the military, absolutely.
That's a discussion for another day, but yes. Yes, we should.
Things go well when we agree on stuff.
We're going to cut that bitch in half.
No, I'm for reforming it, but I'm largely against the welfare system for my own personal reasons.
So the welfare system, just a couple of general facts. And the reason we want to talk about this, or at least maybe I wanted to talk about it and you kind of...
You did. I just kind of...
agreed?
Yeah, because then you wouldn't bitch.
Welfare comes under a lot of scrutiny for a lot of reasons I don't understand. And I know I'm a bleeding heart liberal and everything else, but welfare makes up such a small percentage of what our overall spending goes to. It's always kind of baffled me why it's constantly picked on by usually the conservative right, by everybody, and at least want some sort of reform on this program, but it always comes to the top, especially in election years. Oh, we need to reform welfare, and all the poor people are leeching off this and that. We have free handouts, Bernie Sanders, blah.
That's actually pretty accurate.
I know. So welfare is a program that is designed to help people who are less fortunate than you or I.
People who are lazy.
No, not people who are lazy. And it's designed as a supplement to their income so that they can actually afford to live in our country, a semi-comfortable lifestyle. And by that, I mean they have food, shelter, water, and basic amenities, is what I mean. And with the money that I see in some of our statistics here that we'll get into later, I feel like that's really all they can afford.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Well, there was the queen of welfare, though that gets blown out of proportion too. While I'm against the program for the most part, there's like one of the biggest arguments I always hear is like, what about the queen of welfare? All these people who steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, there was one woman years ago who managed to swindle a couple $100,000 from the U.S. government by abusing the welfare program. It was a one-time isolated incident, but unfortunately, it's one of those things where like her actions reflect on the program itself and cause a lot of these people to get up in arms about it.
Now, something I learned today, and I kind of had them grouped together, but welfare and food stamps and WIC are all separate government programs.
Correct.
So if you're on welfare, that does not mean that you have food stamps, and it does not mean that you can use the WIC program. There are three separate programs that provide different amenities, I guess you would say, to lower income families. On welfare specifically, as of today, there are 110,489,000 people on welfare, making up for a staggering 35% of the U.S. population.
But that, I mean, we have to dig into that question. How many of those people really need to be on welfare? Now,
well,
to clarify, you have to make no more than $1,000 a month to qualify for welfare.
Right.
If you make more than that, you know, you're not eligible for the program. But I'm sure there are people working 2 or 3 under-the-table jobs where the government can't track that income who are still using welfare at the same time.
Okay, so if you were to make if you have to make $1,000 or less, that means you're making $12,000 or less to survive. Could you survive off $12,000 a year on your own?
$12,000 a year?
$12,000 a year.
Yeah, but I'm super stingy with money. No, I live a very luxurious and extravagant life.
If
just $12,000 a year, I'd barely be able to afford my car throughout a year for that.
You'd barely be able to afford an apartment.
That's fair. You charge absurd prices for rent.
No, I don't. I'm perfectly fair. I'm below market value. So we have $1,000. So if you earn $1,000 or less, you can qualify for welfare. Breakdown by demographic: 38.8% of people on welfare are white. 39.8% people are black. 15.7% are Hispanic. 2.4% are Asian. 3.3% are other. So roughly equal amounts of black and white people on welfare. Then pretty low number for Hispanics, 15.7, and then very few Asians and others.
Which, you know what I find interesting, and I'm sure this is just a stigma of the internet and social media, but a lot of the conservatives who bitch about the welfare program always talk about the minorities who are abusing the program. Yet here we are looking at the statistics, and the white community is the second highest percentage by
less than 1%. By 1%.
To the leading, which is the black community, then followed by Hispanics. But, you know, it's like, these minorities are abusing the government system, taking our money. It's like, actually, no, it's not.
It's equal. White people, get your shit together.
Everybody get your shit together. Everybody get your shit together.
Because all welfare matters.
Get the fuck out. No, I'm taking away points for that.
Okay, 10 points from Gryffindor. Okay, so Gryffindor. What? I'm not British. All right, leave me. Stop laughing. I hate your laugh. Anyway, so what's always upset me about the welfare argument is people say, well, they should get a better job. They should just get a better job. They should just make more money. Why do they keep working at their dead-end job, making so little money? Why are they riding the system? And I feel like people want to make more money. I don't think people enjoy living in very small studio apartments with maybe a spouse and 2 to 3 kids sharing 400 square feet. I don't imagine that being a comfortable situation for most people, and I'm sure most people would love to make double what they're making between welfare and their job, but they can't. They can't do it, so why would you want to take that money away from those people?
Go get a better job.
How do you propose...
Wait! Before you freak out, that was my impersonation of a right-wing conservative. That's all that was. I just wanted to throw that out there and see how quickly I could get under your skin.
Well, but so what's always bothered me though is people who don't have the opportunity to get a better job, or the people who end up taking advantage of these programs, not abusing these programs, taking advantage of them as in the program's available, so I'm going to use it to help myself get better. Most people, the majority of people are on welfare from 2 to 5 years. 26% of all welfare recipients are on 2 to 5 years, and that is the largest time frame that they are on welfare. So these people that for some reason think there's a bunch of people out there riding welfare their entire lives, it's not really the case. Only 1 in 4 people are even on it for 5 years at a time. So it's really infuriating to me when people say they should just go get another job. They should just make more money. Even if they're working 2 or 3 other jobs under the table, how much money do you really think they're making? They're not making $200,000 a year and collecting a welfare check.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not possible because you have to be eligible for the program in order for that to happen.
But even if it's under the table, do you think they're making $200,000 a year, $100,000 a year?
No, they're not making 6 figures. I would say at best you're making maybe 60. Maybe if you work at like a super cush job where like the tips are super sweet.
Right. That's a best case scenario.
Yeah.
So even the people who are maybe abusing the system aren't these people aren't getting wealthy off welfare. That's something that's not really happening. Like you said, is kind of an anomaly. A lot of the people who end up on welfare are going to be your inner city people who weren't given a good education, who grew up in rough neighborhoods, who didn't have a chance to succeed to the level that you and I had a chance or opportunity with the resources that we had.
That's fair.
And it's our job as a society to support those people, isn't it?
Yes, I absolutely agree, and I'm for helping your better man. I can't say here as a man who's an advocate for better assistance requirements for homeless vets and veterans that weren't treated properly before they were discharged, but then turn around and say, but a welfare program is bullshit, get off your ass and go get a job. There are circumstances to each and every single case that we will not see. I do agree with the argument, however, that it is a system of abuse, and that's why I think it needs to be reformed.
So you would argue that the majority of welfare recipients abuse it?
No, I would argue
But
that
you said it's a system
I
of
would
abuse.
argue that it creates the opportunity to abuse the system. I mean, look at the statistic. Yes, the majority is 2 to 5 years, but those over 5 years are 19%. Over 5 years on a government assistance program. I understand that this program exists, like you were saying, for the inner city kids, for people who didn't have the opportunities that we had, whether it be due to education or upbringing or whatever the factor, but it's too long. There needs to be a cap. I honestly feel like 18 to 24 months, maybe you could lobby me to 36 for government assistance. But after that, you need to be established, because that whole time you're on welfare receiving government assistance, you need to be looking for some type of job. Minimum wage is going up in in a lot of states, which I disagree with at $15 an hour. But most places, you can get a bullshit job and they're not going to pay you the minimum. They'll pay you $10, $11 an hour. You work 4 hours.
What job is paying 10 or 11 for bullshit?
Anything. You can go.
But anything what?
Let me give you an example.
McDonald's, not a grocery store.
GameStop will pay you $10 an hour to start at their company. You need no experience.
They're going to pay a 16-year-old $10 an hour.
Who's a 16-year-old on welfare?
No, getting working at GameStop.
No, I'm saying you're misunderstanding my argument. What I'm saying is the job that you get doesn't matter. If you sit on welfare and you think, okay, well, I'm going to be picky about the job that I get because I'm getting this government assistance, that's wrong. You should be looking for any available job. I was using GameStop as an example of a company where you need no experience in any facet of what that company does. Like, they sell video games. You could know jack shit about video games. All you need to do is be able to sell the product. And you could be a cashier there. They pay people $10 an hour starting on average for wiping windows. So I mean, like, the jobs are there. Now granted, that's only $1,600 a month if you're working full time before taxes. So I get it. Like, you're still not in a great position because you just went from a program that's giving you money to you're only making $1,600. You need to live around that, but it's a stepping stone. It's a start. It's something. I don't like the idea that welfare doesn't have an end cap, because I feel like there are people out there who can abuse that system and who probably do. And people like that, as an example, would say non-married couples. If I have a girlfriend, right, and we never get married, but I have a shit job, she has a shit job, we both qualify for welfare, and we have 2 kids together. If I claim one of those kids as mine, and she claims one of those kids as the other, we can both benefit from the with child program on the welfare system while both maintaining our jobs. Now we're making a lot of money, and now we can live off of that without ever actually having to come off welfare. And that's something that needs to be more regulated.
But you know what bothers me is if someone played that kind of game with the stock market, it'd be called smart investing.
Which is wrong.
No, but that's the thing, right? You've got people who are, I don't want to call it all conservatives because I don't think it's the whole group, but conservatives are usually more fiscally responsible, which also means they're willing to defend loopholes, tax loopholes, corporate loopholes, stock market loopholes. So if you find some language in the law that permits you to do something like that and you take advantage of it, isn't that just smart investing? Isn't that just a smart way to live? Hey, we don't believe in marriage. We got 2 kids. You claim one, I claim one, and we'll get a bigger check.
No, I'm not saying that one is more morally ethical than the other. They're both fucked up. It's fucked up that our government...
Is it abuse if it's legal?
Yes, just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's not ethically wrong or abusing to the system. Like, that's a separate argument, and I don't want to get into it too much because it's something we could talk about for a full episode. But yes, those things need to be relooked at and reevaluated, and we need to put more restrictions on that. And it's starting to make me sound like I'm for a bigger government, but like, when the system is playing the system to beat itself, that's something you have to look at and say, we need to fix this. But the same goes for welfare.
I would like to get into reform later, but in this instance, in an instance where you could have multiple people claiming multiple children and not be married, if you're the government, how do you prove that those people have been in a relationship and that they are not each other's kids? Or what if they are kids that are mutual to each of them? How do you prove that?
That's what I'm saying.
Because now you're spending money to approve it, right?
No. That's what I'm saying. That's why that part of the system needs to be fixed.
But what I'm asking you is, how would you fix it?
I don't know, man. I'm not in a position to even make a claim of how I would do it. I'm not of the intelligence or the experience in the field of welfare to know, like, this is a plan we could introduce to fix this problem. I am a person of intelligence as I fuck up how I talk, I am a person intelligent enough to look at a problem and realize it's a problem and go to the people whose job it is to fix this and say, hey, we need to fix this.
Well, but it's that kind of situation that infuriates me, because people say, okay, these people are abusing it because, of this situation where they've been together forever and they're just not married. And it's like, what do you want the government to do? And this is the issue I have with people who have an issue with welfare, is they never pose a solution other than take them off welfare, because that's not if these people need it, then they should have access to it. And if under the law currently that's the way it's written, then they're not abusing the law as far as I'm concerned. But how do you prove that? You would literally need one of their friends or family member to come to the government and say, hey, these two guys are a little bit shifty.
Right, but that's involving the government way too much in those people's lives. That's what you need to, like, take the program right now, and you're talking about a program that creates or encourages a single parent household in a way, because of how it works out. Like, oh, you have a kid, we're going to give you this much money, and then you can go get an under-the-table job. Your significant other can do the same thing with your other child, and we can't prove it at all because this is how it's written in the law. So you guys can now end up making bank, and there's no legal recourse whatsoever. That's not the fault of the people, necessarily, to be taking advantage of that. Again, for me, it's a morality thing. Like, there's a lack of integrity there, in my opinion. To sit there and as part of a system that people genuinely need to get by from day to day, that you're looking at and going, I can abuse this because we're in a relationship but not married and have 2 kids.
But then my argument would be, how many people do you think are actually doing that? Because
very minuscule amount.
A very minuscule amount. Is it worth complaining about, though? Because I don't think it is. If you've got 2% abusing, 1% abusing, I don't think it's huge. I don't think it's such a big deal that it's like, this is more important than the wars. This is more important than the economy. This is more important than anything welfare reform. Welfare reform, we need it right now because we're spending too much money.
No. Let's look at how many people are on welfare again?
We have
110 million?
110
million.
110.5 million.
That is a third of the American population.
Yeah, 35.4%.
That's insane.
It's insane.
So yes, 1 or 2% of 110 million, are we putting enough money into welfare where it's worth bitching about? That's arguable, because we have defense spending, which needs to come down, but nobody seems to want to make that argument. But at the same time, if there's a problem, you fix the problem. You don't just say, oh, well, it's not as big a problem as the other things, so let's put it aside for 20 to 40 years, because those people will still get away with abusing that system.
I want to go over some budget numbers. Because I feel like when I looked at these numbers, I found them staggering, and I'll put them in front of you in a second so you can get the visual. But our total federal budget is $3.999 trillion per year. Let's call our federal budget $4 trillion a year.
Sure.
That's a 4 with 12 zeros after it. 12. Okay? Welfare is cost taxpayers $131.9 billion a year, $131.9 billion. In food stamps, if we include that, 69.8 for a total of $201.7 billion per year.
It's a lot of money.
That accounts for only 5% of our total federal budget. 5%. Defense spending has $585 billion this year, 2016. That accounts for 15% of the total budget. Okay. However, when we get into the other numbers, 2% for transportation and infrastructure, 2%, 8% for federal retirees. These are both federal workers and VA benefits,
like DOD, DOJ.
Yep. 3% for education. 2%
astronomically unacceptable.
2% for science and medical research. Okay, so. And the big one that really bothers me, we spend $223 billion in interest on our national debt, which is 6% of our total budget.
That's fucking insane.
6% of our budget goes to interest on our debt, okay? So you brought up a point. You said 35% of all Americans are on welfare. That's ridiculous. if you get 1 or 2% abusing, that number's the number that
it's still a high amount of people.
Right. 45% of all taxable Americans, 45% make $30,000 or less.
That's fucking insane.
33% of all Americans make under $20,000 a year. Nearly 500,000 Americans that make over $100,000 a year pay no income taxes.
But the system's not broken.
7,000 millionaires in this country do not pay any income taxes.
How do you not pay income tax?
So here's how this works, okay? The 500,000 that make over 100,000 a year and pay no taxes, and the 7,000 millionaires don't pay taxes. What these people are able to do, there are really two situations. The first thing is, if there's a natural disaster and your house is destroyed, you can claim that as a tax deduction.
Right.
And in that year, you may not pay income tax because you fall into a category of, you've had a misfortune event.
Right.
You've got, maybe you don't, if you don't pay for a health insurance company, you're paying out of pocket because you have the money to do so. That's you or your spouse getting sick is a misfortune event, and you can deduct that. However, if you make a bad investment and you lose money on that investment, you can write it off as a tax deduction.
What?
And you don't have to pay income taxes if you've lost enough money, essentially. So the article I read basically said, oh, these people are misfortunate because they may have made some bad investments. But I would say, why do the people who have the money think it's okay to just say, hey, people who don't make a lot of money, why don't you get another job? Why is it okay for them to gamble away their money, excess money, huge amounts of money, to the point where you make $1 million a year and you don't need to pay income taxes because you fucking suck at money, even though you get a shitload of it? Why the fuck do you get to pay no taxes and then criticize them for a welfare program?
I don't have an answer for that. That's acceptable. I understand that was a rhetoric question, but
it bothers the fuck out of me.
Well, it should.
And looking at these numbers today, looking at how we spend 3% of our total fucking budget, 3% of $4 trillion on education. 3%.
Okay,
That's it. That's it. Our bridges are crumbling and our infrastructure is crumbling. 2% of the budget. Now, we have something called a discretionary budget. The discretionary budget is what the president proposes to Congress, and Congress must approve every year. So a mandatory budget would be Social Security. There are so many people in the country, those people pay into Social Security, and then so many people qualify for Social Security,
right.
So you have to pay it out. That is a mandatory budget item. It's non-negotiable. It doesn't... Discretionary spending means we are going to allocate money to these things by choice. 54% of all discretionary money goes to the military.
That's fucking insane.
54% of all the money that we can allocate to things that are priorities to us goes to the military. Not to the transportation, which only gets 2%, not to education, that gets 3%, not to science and medical research, which gets 2%, because lives don't matter, goes to the military. 54%. So my question to the audience is, why are we complaining about a welfare and food stamp program that accounts for 5% of our total budget when 54% of our discretionary spending goes to the military, and we allocate less money for federal retirees, education, science and research, and infrastructure? Why the fuck are we complaining about the welfare program? And I understand your point earlier where you said it doesn't mean we shouldn't reform it because it's not the big thing.
Right.
But if we are in a financial crisis where the economy is faltering, don't you attack the big things first?
Yes, I agree. And before anybody answers that question, I hope we get comments and get a discussion about this on the page or the YouTube channel or Podbean, whatever. I would like to point out, before anybody on the right side of the fence argues that it's the undocumented guys that are causing these problems, I want you to know, in case you don't know this, undocumented immigrants do not qualify for welfare. There are checks and balances in the system. If they're not documented, they cannot receive a check. You have to be a legal citizen of the country. So
if they do get some type of federal aid, it is not under the welfare or food stamp program.
Correct.
And I would have to look into that. That might be a topic another.
And keep in mind that food stamps and WIC and welfare are all separate programs. We are specifically talking about welfare because the big thing, and you know what? I think that's actually what the issue is here with this argument, is that most of the time when we hear people bitching about welfare, they argue with food stamps included. They argue with WIC included, and I don't think that they realize that they're three separate programs. And I can understand why you wouldn't realize that, because they're all always talked about as a unified thing, but they do fall under three very separate banners. That's important to know. That said, the welfare program has issues with it, for me, on a moral and ethical stance that need to be fixed. It creates a system of dependence. It can create a system of abuse. It supports single-parent households. I'm not saying, like, from, like, any sort of standpoint, like, oh, you can't be a single parent, power to you. What I'm saying is it perpetuates the idea that it's better to do that to cheat the system. You know what I mean? There are terms and agreements written in the welfare program that are wrong, and they need to be fixed. I think that we do at some point need to talk about the military budget, because that's fucking astronomically high, and I think we should actually do a whole episode on that breakdown of those percentages, and maybe look at it from a perspective of, hey, why is this such a problem for America? Because it's clearly a problem, and I don't think anybody wants to talk about it. I really don't. I think they want to talk about all of these problems in separate entities. We'll talk about the defense budget separately, but we're going to talk about our medical research separately, but they're all under the same government funding. It's like one big pie, and you cut it into slices for your areas that you want to put money into. That's something that we need to address.
And I think what happens, though, is people don't understand this budget breakdown. So they think welfare is somehow even with defense spending, is somehow even with education spending, and they hear the talking points through the media, and they think, oh, welfare is a problem, welfare is a problem, welfare is a problem. But they don't understand how small a problem welfare is compared to other budget items through the federal government. We're only talking federal government here. We're not talking about state assistance. This is just the federal the federal system here. Excuse me. To put things in perspective, one more time, everyone out there who thinks that you're going to be very, very successful and you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to live very comfortably, only if you made $100,000 a year, what percentage of people in the U.S. do you think make $100,000 a year? 100,000.
Low, less than 20.
Less than 20?
Yeah.
That's accurate. 16%. Nice. 16% of all Americans make $100,000 or more a year, which means if you make $100,000, congratulations, you're in the top 16% of all Americans. So for everybody who thinks that you're going to go land a job that pays you $100,000, you have less than a 1 in 5 chance of being that person.
Well, yeah, but I mean, now you're talking in terms of like companies that are going overseas, and then there's a problem with the infrastructure of America and its workforce. All of this stuff ties in. I think that's my biggest argument, or my biggest issue with the entire thing, is that all of this does tie in. We talked about this budget breakdown, which at first I thought was a little off topic because this episode was supposed to be about welfare, but I'm very quickly realizing that it actually does come into play a lot. Let me see this paper right here that we have, because we do research, folks.
Because what I'm trying to say is welfare is a minute problem compared to some of these other expenditures, big expenditures. And from my experience, it's the people with the money, the people that make $100,000 a year, aka the top 16%,
right,
or the people who make, say, $85,000 a year, which I'm going to assume is between the top 20 or 25%. It's those people who have an issue with the welfare program. There's no one out there making $40,000. I mean, you might have a couple of people out there making $40,000 that look down and say, man, ends meet really, really fucking easy for me, and I only make $40,000 a year. Why should someone making $30,000, why should someone making $12,000 get all this government assistance?
Right. No, I agree. But all right, so we have 3% of the budget going towards education. Do you think that if that education budget went up, say, to even 10%, that the percentage of people in America on welfare would inevitably go down as a result of better education for better job opportunities?
Absolutely.
So the whole thing ties together. Like, you can't say, well, it is a big problem because so much money goes to it. If we took half of what went to military spending and put it to medical and scientific research, education, and shit like that, the other bad numbers would inevitably go down. Welfare statistics would go down. Food stamp statistics would go down because people would have better opportunities for better jobs. But that's a whole separate argument, including why we need to bring our companies back to America, especially in the midst of Nabisco going overseas right now. So we could just drag this argument into a million different episodes. We should do an anthology series on this.
And I think it will it will come to that. The reason I wanted to start with welfare is because it's one of those issues that constantly comes up. But it bothers me because these people need this money. We're talking about people who make... There are honest people out there who make less than $12,000 a year, or they have a dependent child, so a single mom with a child with a handicap, who maybe either has to pay for assistance to help her child, or she has to go work to support this child, but he can't go to he needs to be accommodated. There are honest people out there who really need this money. They really need this money.
Right.
And to see these statistics broken down, most people aren't on this program that long. Maybe 5 years. The majority of the people are on it less than 5 years. Some people have made complaints because they think the welfare pays too much. In 39 states, welfare pays more than an $8 per hour job. In the number of U.S. states where welfare pays more than $12 per hour would be 6 states that do that. And then in 8 states, the U.S. pays more than the average salary of a teacher. And I can understand the argument of why those people maybe shouldn't be getting that much money, but on the other hand, I'm a proponent of a slightly higher minimum wage, and $8 an hour I don't think is something you can live off of either.
No, I agree.
So it's been a little long-winded.
Yeah.
But
I have a final thought, but it has nothing to do with the show, so go ahead and wrap up whatever you want to wrap up.
It's been a little long-winded, but I think it's important as a citizen of this country to, before you criticize social programs, look into how much they actually cost. Because everyone is very critical of social programs when in fact they're really just a minuscule item on the budget. They're substantial, but they're not as big as other items, and honestly I feel like we should reallocate a lot of money to other social programs and other federal entities. So please take a look. There's a ton of websites. Head over to Google. You can just look up welfare statistics. You can find the rundown. You can find the full budget and where all that money is going and what income tax rates are and who's paying what. It's all out there. So it was enlightening for me to look at today. So I encourage you to please comment on this episode. Everybody just comment on all our episodes.
Wow. Let's whore ourselves out there for a second. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Not that we think like we're like the greatest show on earth, but we're pretty funny. We're trying to bring honest discussions about serious things that you're not going to see anywhere else, because most of the time there's some sort of agenda fueling it. And you know what our agenda is? We're just fucking angry all the time. And like, that's why I think we really can sell an argument, or like at least, and it's, you know what, I take that back. We're not selling an argument. We're bringing a safe space where people can bring their opinions and their thoughts to the table, and we can discuss it like human beings.
Because in America, you shouldn't be afraid to voice your opinion, even if you sound like a retard. Because to some people, I sound like a retard. They're like, look at this fucking hippie over here giving all the poor people money.
Well, I mean, you just let's be honest here for a second. The Republican frontrunner for president is a guy who literally just says his opinion all the time and sounds like a retard. So
yes, and
we are the land of opportunity.
And he's also someone who says, "Hey, look, there's a tax loophole. Let me take advantage of it." You know what? I'm not going to get into it.
It wouldn't be a Coffee Milk Hour episode if we didn't make fun of Donald Trump at least once.
Fuck that fucking orange, man. I fucking hate it. Anyway, that's been the Coffee Milk Hour for today. We want a discussion. So comment and we'll have a discussion gladly. I'll sit here and type all night.
Don't be too desperate. Put your shirt back on. Thanks for listening. No, God, it's horrible. Thanks for listening, guys. I'm going to go watch a movie. We'll see you guys Wednesday, where we'll probably talk about the pros and cons of blitzing a quarterback in a 3rd and long situation. I mean, we won't talk about that, but something. I don't know. But bye, everybody.